During the 2nd century BC, in the time of the Maccabees, some Jews chose torture and death rather than following the order of the Seleucids to eat pork. The Levitical food commands had become such a defining feature of their identity. So in Mark 7, did Jesus really casually dismiss these commandments during a discussion about hand washing? Because the whole context of this passage is regarding a tradition, that hands that had not been ceremonially washed before eating had become in some way defiled, as if they were ritually unclean. But this is a non-biblical tradition. The Greek word koinos that is translated here in Mark 7 as defiled is used to describe this non-biblical defilement, and is the same word used in Acts 10 with Peter's vision, where it describes another non-Levitical form of defilement, as discussed in the previous video. Jesus is critical of elevating this human tradition, and he makes an accusation to the Pharisees that he is talking to about abandoning the commandment of God. That would seem a very odd accusation to level if Jesus is about to do away with the commandments himself. So when Jesus states that whatever goes into a person from outside cannot defile, since it enters not the heart but the stomach and goes out into the sewer, that should be read, in my opinion, in the context of unwashed hands, as a counter-argument to a non-biblical purity system. And this is exactly how the parallel passage in Matthew 15 concludes. To eat with unwashed hands does not defile. Jesus' Jewish audience would not have thought this conversation had strayed into eating pork and other unclean meats, any more than if I started talking about how I eat all meats, you would think I was talking about eating cats and dogs. Christians who like eating bacon may be happy to read this interpretation into the text, but it is completely alien to the actual 1st century Jewish context that Jesus was speaking in. So what about "thus he declared all foods clean" in verse 19 of Mark, something that is completely absent in Matthew's account? I'm aware of various views regarding these 4 words in the Greek, including that they simply relate to what Jews would consider food, i.e. the meat of Levitically clean animals, and this simply confirms the point Jesus has made, that Levitically clean food remains clean despite being eaten with unwashed hands. Or that these words should be understood to be a continuation of Jesus' speech, where he is simply describing the actions of the stomach and latrine on food taken into the body, which seems to be how the King James Version renders it. No, "thus he declared all foods clean" in this translation. However, let's for a moment take the majority Christian position, that these Greek words represent not Jesus' speech, but an interpretative comment by the author of Mark's Gospel, which is why this phrase ends up in brackets in most translations, and that whoever wrote this did mean to say that they thought Jesus had abolished clean and unclean food commands. Bearing in mind that view asserts that the anonymous, non-eyewitness author or editor of Mark's Gospel was concluding that Jesus did away with the Levitical food commands, a point of absolutely monumental significance, and yet this conclusion was never mentioned anywhere else in the New Testament. In that case, I would argue something similar to David Bivin in this article on JerusalemPerspective.com, that one should not be too quick to disregard God's commandments because of a 4-word parenthetical comment at the end of a conversation regarding hand washing. Of course, this is all just my opinion. In the next video, I'll discuss the real reason behind another often disregarded commandment, the biblical Sabbath.